Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 13th, 2022 Connecticut Paid Leave Board of Directors meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. It is 9:02. Before we take attendance, I would like to take a moment to recognize the incident in Bristol today and have a moment of silence for our two fallen officers who passed away in the line of duty. And also for a third officer who is in the hospital and hopefully recovering from surgery this morning. So if we can all just take a moment of silence to reflect on our officers, their families, and certainly all of those in the Bristol community, our Connecticut State Police and others who are responding to this terrible incident this morning. Thank you. Thank you. Amber, would you please take the attendance for this meeting today? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Ava Bermuda-Zimmerman. Don't believe Ava has joined us yet. Isha Canada.
Present.
Thank you, Isha. Good morning. Adrienne Cochran.
Present.
Thank you. Britt Marie Cole Johnson. I don't believe Britt Marie is joining us today. Michelle Gilman.
Present.
Sheila Hummel. Sheila, I see you. You're on mute. Thank you. Sal Luciano.
Here.
Alex Marcelino. Alex is not with us today. Ellen McKitterick.
Here.
Fern will not be joining us today. John Scott.
Here.
Good morning, John. Mike Soltis.
Here.
Good morning, Mike. Molly Weston Williamson.
Here.
Good morning, Molly. Holly Williams.
Here.
And Justin Zartman.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Amber. I'd also like to acknowledge the members of the public who are joining us this morning. I believe that Representative Porter has joined us as well. Representative, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thank you for your advocacy of the mission of the Paid Leave Authority and for all of your work at the legislature on behalf of our families and the caregivers in Hartford and beyond. So thank you so much for all of your support. And as we have others that join, we will certainly recognize them as well. Representative Porter, did you want to comment before we get started?
No, I was just saying thank you. Well, you're welcome, and then thank you all for what you're doing. Phenomenal job with Connecticut Paid Leave, and I'm just really excited to be here this morning to hear about the progress that we're continuing to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. So next we will move on to the next order of business, review and approval of the September 8th, 2022 minutes, which were distributed last week. Are there any corrections or further discussion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Otherwise, we'll take a vote for all in favor.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Andrea, would you please lead us in the discussion regarding a proposed public statement that the employee contribution rate will not change in 2023?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As you may recall, our statute requires that starting in this November and every subsequent November, the authority make an announcement as to whether or not the contribution rate will change. Even though, the statute also says that we may make a statement as to whether or not the contribution rate will change. It doesn't require us to do so. But because we are in our first year, we are getting a number of inquiries as to whether or not that 0.5% will change at all. We, as you know, have been recommending very strongly since the program is so new that no rate change be implemented now. And we'd like to make a more public statement that would just simply say pursuant to the appropriate section of the statute, that I know Aaron could probably cite by heart, but I cannot, that we will not be changing the contribution rate for now, as we continue to assess and ensure the solvency of the fund. So that's what I'm recommending today.
May I have a motion to authorize the authority staff to issue public statement that the employee contribution rate will not change in 2023?
Luciano, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So the statement is saying the 0.5 is staying the 0.5. I assume that you're also thinking benefits stay the same.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That specific portion of the statute doesn't speak to benefit changes at all, but you're right for the clarification. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Molly. Any additional questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Motion carries, one abstention. Thank you. Aaron, next on the agenda, would you please lead us in the discussion regarding the proposed revisions to the private plan transition policy?
Thank you very much. Let me just pull up I have a slide to try and help simplify the discussion. So as you may recall, a couple of months ago now, the board authorized us to post a proposed policy relating to private plan transitions, where we had suggested that there's a change to the entity financially responsible for providing benefits. So going from the public program to private, or from private to public, or private to private. Our original suggestion had been that there would be basically a line in the sand, and as of that date of transition, the responsibility changed. We received some comments on that proposed policy that asked us to really revisit the whole issue. They really wanted us to take a different approach. So in light of those comments, we have gone back to the basics, really focusing on our goals of minimizing the burden on claimants, particularly claimants who are in the middle of a claim, minimizing administrative complexity, not only for ourselves, but for also the private plan entities. We also wanted to make sure whatever solution we put in place is something that is able to be implemented in connection with all types of claims, in particular intermittent leaves, because those are very difficult to administer. We have a statutory responsibility to ensure that private plans provide equal or better benefits as our public program. So that is always top of mind when we're thinking about what the policies should be. And in order for it to be implemented consistently, and in order for people to have an understanding of what their rights are and what they should expect, we want a solution that is relatively easy to understand and relatively easy to be explained. So with that in mind, there's basically two parts to this. The first is the takeover versus runout. As I mentioned, our original draft really proposed doing a takeover situation, but now we have reconsidered, and based on recommendations from both advocates for claimants as well as from the insurance industry, the recommendation is to require a runout, which means that even when there is a transition of responsibility, the old plan will continue to administer any claims that began while that old plan was in effect. This does make it easier for claimants because they just kind of continue as is. They don't have to file again. We don't worry about them losing eligibility or having a different plan, a benefit calculation, because they have to file for a new plan. Even though requiring runout, we think does make sense, we want to maintain an exception in the case of an involuntary termination. If we terminate a plan for cause, we are in most situations saying that there is a significant problem with the administration of the plan, And so if necessary, we would take over that plan and those pending claims to protect the affected individuals. We don't want to be in a situation where we think the plan is, needs to be terminated right now because of a problem by the plan administrator or the employer, but we're saying to the employees, but you stay with them. So we want to maintain that exception. The other half of this policy, however, is what to do with the benefit entitlement of 12 weeks of benefits in a 12-month period. There's two ways of dealing with it. The first is that you take a history. At the time of the transition, the employee's benefit entitlement under the new plan would be reduced by the amount of benefits received under the old plan. The alternative is what we're kind of colloquially calling a fresh 12, meaning that the employee would receive an allotment of 12 weeks of benefits under the new plan, regardless of what they received under the old plan. A few months ago, the board approved our proposal that if there is a situation where an employee moves from a private plan employer to a new public plan employer, that employee would get a fresh 12. We're not taking a history for our purposes. And so the question is, do we mandate that in this situation for all private plan transition options? And we think that we need to. Requiring the fresh 12 is really the only practical way that we think is possible to manage all of the complexities of these transitions, particularly when you take into consideration that different private plans may use one of 4 methods for calculating the 12-month period. And when you take into consideration that with this approach, with the old claims still being managed by the old plan, and then you have the same employee file a new claim with the new plan, particularly if it's an intermittent or reduced schedule situation, you're now in a situation where the two plans are going to have to be talking almost weekly to figure out, okay, all right, how much of the benefit allotment did Erin take this week with her intermittent claim with you? All right, I'll reduce the entitlement. All right, well, how much is she taking with the new plan? Well, I'll have to reduce that entitlement. That level of interaction and entanglement is frankly just impossible to manage. It's hard enough when you have, just in my experience with the state, multiple agencies trying to manage one set of FMLA leave, and we have one set of HR, one set of policies, one payroll and scheduling system, and it's still tricky. Trying to manage it across separate entities, we think is pretty much impossible. So that is our recommendation. We have a new proposed policy that was sent to everybody, which has the elements of the Runout and the fresh 12 we sent to you. What we would like to do is post that new revised draft policy for further public comment. If we get that out, if we get that approved this week, we can get it posted in the Connecticut Law Journal, have another 30-day comment period, and then we would come back to you at the December board meeting with a final policy proposal to adopt in advance of the January 1st transition, because there are a number of employers that will be beginning private plans in January. So we want to get this in place before that. Are there any questions?
If there are no questions, may I have a motion to authorize the authority staff to post the revised private plan transition policy for public comment?
Motion, Molly.
I believe we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I have to interrupt for just a moment. I have Molly as motioning. I did not get a second on that.
I'll second Holly.
Thank you.
Alan. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion or questions? With that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Can you next provide an update on the policy revisions posted for public comment? You should have all received copies of these policies with the board materials. And as a reminder, these policies are the sole proprietor, self-employed policies, and holiday and shutdowns. Erin, if you can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is a reminder. We posted these other two policies for public comment. We did not really receive any public comments. And so now we're coming back asking for the board to adopt them. With regard to the sole proprietor and self-employed individual policy, the revisions included clarifying the contribution obligations. So the sole proprietor or self-employed individual has to enroll, make the affirmative decision to enroll. And so we want to just be clear that they owe for that entire quarter, since contributions are owed on a quarterly basis. The obligation would be for that entire quarter. With regard to withdrawals, because of confusion about whether it was mandatory or permissive, we have been allowing people to say, oh, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to enroll. And we've sort of let them withdraw. And we've retroactively basically made it as though it never happened. So we just want to kind of formalize that and put some framework around that to say, if we're going to say that you're withdrawn retroactive to the date of enrollment and you never gave us any contributions, that's fine. We're not going to make you pay contributions. If by any chance you received any benefits, that may cause us to say you can withdraw now. But there are situations where we may also allow you to withdraw retroactive to the date of enrollment. But if we did that, any benefits we awarded to you must be repaid. We have language in the proposed policy that, so the statute says you have to stay enrolled for 3 years. But if a person no longer meets the eligibility requirements, say they move out of state or their organization, the entity for which they are the sole proprietor, shuts down, then they're no longer eligible. And so we can sort of terminate without penalty, but we reserve the right to require proof. And then because we want to make sure we don't have a loophole where somebody enrolls and then withdraws because they don't want to make a contribution and then wants to come back in, the scenario here would be they have a commission, they're getting a lot of money and they don't want to make contributions on the basis of that commission, but then they want to turn around and file a claim so that that commission bolsters up their benefit calculation. That's someone who would be gaming the system, and we want to protect the solvency of the trust and sort of the program for everybody. So we have a provision that says, if you enroll and then withdraw, and then you want to come back, we're going to say you have to wait 4 quarters from the later of the effective date of withdrawal or the date of request to withdraw, just to make sure that we're preventing any loopholes that would allow for gaming of the system. And finally, we just wanted to formally explain the proof of income that we can require for sole proprietors and self-employed individuals. Basically, we'll look at tax records, and depending upon the time of year that they need to apply for benefits, they may not have the most current tax records available. So we're giving ourselves the ability to look at prior years. This helps sole proprietors because you can't always wait until your taxes are filed to need medical assistance. And then on the shutdowns and holidays, the changes that we proposed, again, no comments. I think because really our changes really just added examples. As a reminder, our existing policy is consistent with the federal FMLA rules, so that if you're out on a block leave and a holiday occurs during that time when you're out for the whole week, your benefits don't change because we're paying you on that weekly basis. But just like with FMLA, if a holiday occurs or a shutdown occurs during a week when the employee is working at least part of the week, then the employee would not receive a benefit payment for the day of the holiday unless the employee and their employer can show that they would have been working that day. And finally, just as a reminder, because our benefits are based on earnings from the base period, which is the first 4 of the 5 most recently completed quarters, they're not a one-for-one replacement of what you would have earned today if you worked today. there really is no increase of benefits to account for, holiday overtime or double time kind of pay. 'Cause we don't pay the 1-for-1, we pay based on the base period. I don't know if there's any questions about those two policies.
If there are no questions, let's proceed on individual motions regarding both of these policies. May I have a motion to adopt the policy revisions regarding sole proprietor, self-employed?
So moved. Scott.
A second.
Any additional discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to the next policy, may I have a motion to adopt the policy revisions regarding holidays and shutdowns?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? We will move to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you again, Erin, for your work on that and for your efforts in terms of describing the various policies. Moving on to our next business. John, would you please provide the claims administration update?
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. Just going to share my screen.
We can see your screen, John.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have claims data. So total claims filed as of October 11th, 77,943. September's claims in was 7,600, and October through the 11th is 2,617. We're averaging a little over 7,500 claims per month. And claims received status, all approved claims, 43,273, which now represents 56% of all claims. Denied claims at 23,551, representing 30% of total claims, and the approved claims percentages have been ticking up as the trend, and the denials have been trending downward. Pending claims at 6,355. And then statistics excluding the COVID claims, 6,334 COVID claims total. When you look at the approved and denied claims numbers and percentages there, you can see that that skews the approval rate up to 59% and the denial rate down to 25%. Okay, and claims by reason, trends remain similar in place here, with employees' own illness or injury being the vast majority of claims, followed by bonding and pregnancy and childbirth, care of a family member, and then also the other types of claims are in the chart on the right-hand side here, which represent a significantly lower claims volume. In demographic information, again, you can see that the age group 26 to 41 is by far the largest group represented, and followed by 42 to 57 and 58 to 76. And then you can also see that the female claims are outpacing male claims by over 2 to 1. And that's been relatively consistent as well over the course of the past several months. And then some additional demographic info, claims by age group and leave reason. And again, the own injury and illness is the largest, followed by the pregnancy and childbirth, and then the bonding as well, broken down by age group. And then leave reason by gender. So again, you get a sense of where claims are with respect to some of the demographics involved. And I changed up this slide a little bit. We had a month-to-month numbers here, and they've remained relatively consistent. The type of claims being filed, continuous, intermittent, and reduced schedule. So I thought this slide might be a little bit more meaningful, showing the percentages of claims and the total volume of claims, continuous, intermittent, and reduced schedule on a cumulative basis from the inception of the program through that 10/11 date. You can see again that continuous is by far the largest, followed by intermittent and then reduced schedule. Okay, and our claims per 10,000, these are the top 10 towns, and these have been relatively consistent as well. Whoops, excuse me. These have been relatively consistent as well. Some of the towns have moved around a little bit, and there is a mix of rural, suburban, and some urban areas as well. And then here is the map showing the areas in which those claims have been filed and the numbers of claims filed on a town-by-town basis. And thanks to Jacqueline Cozen for producing this map that correlates with the numbers of claims filed on a per town basis. And then with regard to approved claims, you can see that the employee's own illness or injury represents almost 43% of claims. Bonding is at 29% and pregnancy at 18%. And then when you take a look at the pregnancy and bonding together, which are associated claim types, that rises to almost 48% of approved claims. See the durations here as well for the non-COVID and then COVID claims as well. And some monthly claims customer care center data. This is the data that comes through from AFLAC with regard to their customer service efforts. And you can see a variety of information here, total calls, percent answered in 30-second and abandoned in the graph on the left-hand side. We've got trends running from April through September data there, and then the hold and handle time as well on the right-hand side, and things have remained relatively consistent with regard to the data that's coming from them. Calls dropped a little bit in September, and we have seen some improvements, some significant improvements in customer service and messaging timelines and return phone calls in a more timely manner, et cetera, with the data we're getting from AFLAC as well. Okay, and then with regard to payments, as of October 8th, 313,000 payments released to 33,272 unique employees and covering 1.8 million total days paid, and total gross payments in the program as of October 8th, 185,448,000. You can see the average daily amount here as well. Payment type remains consistent as well at about 11% for debit cards and 89% for direct deposits. And that concludes the claims presentation. Any questions?
John, just a comment, again, just to reinforce the customer service statistics really have improved greatly. And so again, thank you to this team and to our vendor as well for really digging in on that, and it makes a tremendous difference, obviously, to our customers and to employees and families. So thanks again for those insights. Good improvements.
Great. Thank you. Stop sharing.
Any other questions for John on the claims report? If not, we will proceed with the next item. Amber, could you please provide the outreach and engagement and legislative updates?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Amber, we can see it.
Thank you. All right. Okay. So for business registration, we have 143, 200,000 businesses registered, which is an increase of almost 1,500 for this month. 694 TPAs are registered. For contributions, we've received 627 million and received or in transit. For private plans, we have 614 approved private plans, which is an increase of 7 effective 1/1/2023. So of those, 561 are fully insured, 53 are self-insured. That covers approximately 39,000 workers. And we got this information using the Department of Labor's Q1 2022 data. Our contact us inquiries are for 234 open contact us inquiries, 364 new inquiries created this month, 320 inquiries were closed this month, and 42,866 total inquiries closed to date since September of 2020. For small business support and benefit team advisors, we have 37 open cases. 43 cases were created this month and 48 cases were closed this month. So that's 2210 cases closed to date since January of 2022. And our number of Connecticut workers covered by Connecticut paid leave are 1.6 million. And that's using the Department of Labor Q1 2022 data. For Connecticut paid leave portal updates for our October-November activities, employer registration and contribution portal, our production support continues. Development for fund recovery is underway, and the project to redesign and re-platform the website is kicking off. Research phase is nearly complete and content review is commenced. For our benefit and claim administration, integrating AFLAC claim and employer payment data into the Connecticut platform. So for our outreach and engagement and legislative updates. So our website statistics by month for January through September, we've had 635,305 users. So that's 71% new and 29% returning. We've had 1.6 million sessions, 5.7 million page views, and that's 3.4 pages per session, and that's 3 minutes and 11 seconds per minute for session. So basically what that means is people are visiting more pages and they're staying longer. So we've had a little bit of an uptick, as you can see, for total page views. And this is basically because people are catching up on their contributions. So for website statistics by quarter, we've had our total users. Again, this is our total page views where you can see that's increased again. And again, that's because we've had people doing their catch-up contributions. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we had, this was one of our posts where we do the October Safe Walk in Waterford. That's going to be the 23rd. It's a 4K. And so this was one of our, I want to say this was our social media post on Facebook and possibly LinkedIn. Some of our radio interviews, we had all of the major areas for New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, and New London. So that was 94.3, Hot 93.7, Star 99.9, and 107.7. And through Connoisseur Media, we have reached all of the Fairfield, New Haven counties through WEBE, WNICC, WPLR, WYBC, WFox. We're going to be doing an interview this Friday with Fox 61, and we've also had some work done with the Hartford Current. So November is Family Caregiver Month. This is what our post is going to look like. We want to celebrate the caregiver in your life. So if we want you to recognize your family caregiver or someone who is one. So we're going to be celebrating them with a sweet treat. We're asking individuals to let us know about someone in their life who is a family caregiver. Our plan is to send these individuals a care package to surprise them and sweeten their day along with Connecticut Paid Leave literature. So we'll also do a series of posts with tips to support the caregivers in your life. So we want to ask everyone, please share the post and help us get submissions. Our fall webinar series is kicking off next week. We have 18 webinars scheduled from October 18th to December 16th. Our topics will be your guide to paid leave, which is just a general overview for anyone who needs a refresher or is just looking to learn about the program. Our small business owner's guide to Connecticut paid leave, HR professionals guide to Connecticut paid leave, and the workers guide to Connecticut paid leave. All of these webinars have been added to our events page at ctpaidleave.org. Our additional webinars for specific partners will be October 17th for the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce for their HR Council, November 17th for the Connecticut Association of Healthcare for the Home HR Group, and December 7th for the Connecticut Association of Healthcare at Home. And this is their entire membership. In our webinars this season, we'll have an extra focus on the differences between Connecticut paid leave and FMLA and really how they tie together. And this is an example of our flyer with the upcoming webinar dates. So we do have these in PDF, and we've been sharing this with some of our advocates and other groups that are disseminating information for us. And we do have a targeted email campaign update. So the objective and strategy will reach workers in towns that have lower utilization rates on an application per capita basis. And how are we going to do this? Targeted email campaign was sent to 244,711 Connecticut workers in the bottom 60 towns based on the numbers of applications per 10,000 residents. So the results were we had 48,369 opens. So the open percent rate was 21.52%. We had 5,188 clicks, and the click-through percentage was 2.31. So that is pretty good. Top links by clicks were the claims questionnaire. Are you likely to be eligible? That was 33% of all clicks. The benefits estimator was 17% of all clicks, and the qualifying circumstances were 10% of all clicks. And then new Connecticut FMLA guidance was 9% of all clicks. This is one of our new infographics. Have you heard about Connecticut paid leave? Qualifying circumstances? Are you an eligible worker? And what are the requirements to receive Connecticut paid leave? Podcast update, our September releases on 9/12 was an interview with Senator Julie Kushner, and 9/23 was Living with Alzheimer's. So the podcast has 994 downloads so far, which is fantastic. Nancy is super excited. And our legislative updates and activities. October 5th, there was a presentation to the UFCW Union stewards at Foxwoods. October 13th, which is today. So Jessica and Jacqueline are presenting to the Northwest Hills Council of Governments in Goshen. And November 29th is a work in progress, but it's the government supports in post-COVID world. So it's a collaborative program in coordination with the Governor's Council on Women and Girls, and it's chaired by Lieutenant Governor. Andrea will speak about Connecticut paid leave, and the Comptroller's Office will speak about essential worker supports. There's possible other agencies to participate like DSS, DCF, DPH, and Department of Labor. And that is it. I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions? All right, that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Amber, thank you so much. Really excellent report on all of the work and activities being done. It's hard to believe that that report encompasses, 1 month's report. But again, some really exciting opportunities and engaging opportunities, particularly on the social media and outreach fronts. So thank you again to you and Andrea, the full team, for your continued work on this. Again, it really makes a difference, I think, as we see the statistics of enrollment and engagement continue to increase. So thank you again. Any other additional comments or discussion? Moving forward, we'll go on to the next agenda item. for our committee reports. Committee chairs, would you please provide your reports? We'll begin with policy and personnel. Mike?
Good morning. Our committee met last week and we discussed the 3 policies that Aaron presented to you today. Does anyone have any questions? That's our report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate that. And thanks again to the committee. Outreach and engagement, Molly.
The committee met at the end of last month, and I think Amber's report basically covered most of what we talked about. So unless there's any questions for her, I think that's all for us.
Any questions for Molly? Excellent. Thank you again, Molly, to you and the committee, and again to the team on the outreach and engagement. Next, we have our finance and audit report. Holly.
Thank you. The Finance and Audit Committee met this month and received the financial updates on the authority. And Dave is going to walk you through the financial statements.
Thank you, Holly. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen.
We can see your screen, Dave.
Thank you very much for the confirmation. Okay, so we're going to talk about the month of August and give you a preview of September. So for the month of August, we had spending of $1,068,000. That compares to a budget of $1.3 million. So that's a positive variance of over $275,000. Significant expenses for the month of August included salaries and related expenses of over $500,000, grievance adjudication work that the Department of Labor does for Connecticut paid leave. That was $135,000. That's a quarterly expense. So we pay that 4 times a year, and we paid that this month. We also had IT support expense of $132,000, contact center of $125,000, and outreach expense of $106,000. Year to date, the authority has spent $1.9 million compared to a budget of $3.5 million. So year to date, we're ahead by $1.6 million. The significant expense categories year to date are the same as the month to date. So in terms of the categories, so I won't go over those again. So that's what's going on in terms of operations. In terms of bond spending, we spent $25,000 in the month of August for our claims integration work. We are ahead of budget there by almost $600,000. Year to date, it's a similar story. We've spent $42,000 year to date, and we're ahead of budget by over $1.2 million. In terms of how the bonds are compared to what was allocated by the state, the allocation by the state remains at over $16 million. And to date, the authority has spent $11.2 million. So that allows almost $4.8 million left for the authority to spend on its various IT-related projects. Moving on to contribution activity. For the month of August, contributions were at $794,000. They were less than budget by about $861,000, but that was offset for the most part by the investment income of $815,000, which was better than budget by $791,000. That's primarily driven by the rising interest rate in our short-term investment fund, which for the month of August was at about 2.3%. We had budgeted at about 0.1% because at the time, that's what we were earning in the short-term investment fund account. So we're happy to see that the rate is going up. In terms of money being spent from the fund, we spent almost $23 million in benefits paid. That's equating to about $5.7 million a week. So that's been an uptick in the past month or two. So we're pleased to see that more people are using the program. The remainder of the expenses are as usual, no surprises there. So the net activity for the fund was $23.5 million compared to a budget of $38.1 million. So we are ahead of budget by almost $14.5 million, primarily driven by the less than budgeted activity for benefits paid. Year to date, similar story. Contributions coming into date are $105 million. That's fiscal year to date. Benefits are $43 million. And the net activity in the fund year to date is over $54 million compared to budgeted activity of over $28 million. And that's a positive variance of over $26 million. What does that mean for the fund? The fund as of August is at $437 million. And the primary drivers of that are contributions coming in, which since the beginning of the program have been over $624 million, and benefits paid out, which have been almost $146 million through the end of August that we started paying in January of this calendar year. We got a request from the Finance and Audit Committee for a balance sheet. A balance sheet shows the assets and liabilities of the authority at a moment in time. So as of the end of August, this statement shows what the assets and liabilities were. Significant assets of the authority are almost $10.5 million of cash in our operating funds, $4.8 million in our bond funds, like we showed you before on the bond schedule, $424 million in our short-term investment fund, $12 million we have in the Imprest account at Aflac, and the rest of the balance sheet are our fixed assets for our IT system, which is basically our employee contribution system. On the other side of the balance sheet, that's liabilities, and our liabilities are the money that the authority owes for seed funds and the money it owes for bond funds payable. And then the remaining balance is the fiduciary net position. In the for-profit world, you would know that as equity or capital. Preview of what's happening in September. September activity was almost $960,000. Again, the typical category: salaries and benefits, contact center. We paid for 2 months of contact center in the month of September, outreach. Benefits paid out during the month of September were $28 million. That's higher than a typical month, but that's because we paid out for 5 weeks. Just the way the calendar works, some months we'll pay 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks. So that's why it's $28 million. As far as money coming in, we got $500,000 of contributions for the month of September. So that gets us to almost $625 million of cumulative contributions to date. One more thing to cover. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share another one. Okay. Annually, we review the administrative fee for the paid leave authority. So as some of you might remember, the administrative fee is paid from contributions, and it covers the operational expenses of the authority. That administrative fee is budgeted annually and approved by this board of directors. The fees calculation is based on a percentage of contributions. And like I mentioned, annually, the authority reconciles the fee calculation. In other words, what was budgeted versus what should the administration fee have been actually based on actual contributions. So For budget, the administrative fee to date was over $19 million. That's what was budgeted, and that's what was paid from the contribution fund. Since contributions through the end of June 30th, 2022 were $518 million and higher than what was budgeted, the calculated administrative fee was $32 million. So that creates a difference of almost $13 million. What does that mean? Well, stating the obvious, contributions were higher than budgeted. So thus the administration fee was calculated higher than what was budgeted. But the only amount that was paid to the authority was what was budgeted, not the actual calculation. The paid leave authority has been living within its means and within budget, in fact, less than budget. So it doesn't need the additional $13 million. So that amount will remain in the contribution fund to continue to be made available to benefit payments. So just wanted everybody to know about that. That concludes my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Molly?
I just wanted to, I think I ask you this question like every 2 months because I always get confused about it.
No problem, Molly.
The administrative fee is, here's what the authority is spending in-house for all the parts of administering the program, which is separate from what we're paying AFLAC for the services AFLAC is providing. Is that right?
That is 100% correct, Molly.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome, no problem. Ava?
I was wondering for that kind of a surplus money that's unexpected, the amount of money that payments are higher and payouts are lower. If that keeps going, that surplus money just stays in, I guess, our bank account. Can you explain that further? And I also wanted to know, are there protections to make sure that the state of Connecticut doesn't take any surplus money and put it into the general fund?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want me to answer that, Dave, or you?
Sure. No, go right ahead.
Okay, so I'll answer the last part first. Morning, Eva. The statute itself, the statutory language actually protects the fund, and so it can't be swept, and that is where our protection comes from, to be moved into the general fund for any purposes. So we do have statutory protection against that. So the first part is that we don't really look at that dollar amount as a surplus. We actually budgeted much lower purposely because we just wanted to make sure, as David said, that we're really just living within our means and only using what we need to cover our operational expenses, because we're always very acutely aware that it's everyone's paycheck money, right? And so we want to make sure we use it responsibly and operate as frugally as we possibly can. So that's that part. So it sits there now, but the idea is to have as much in the contribution fund as possible. So where we don't need right now, right, given what we have, what we don't need to actually run our operations, it stays in the contribution fund to remain available to pay additional benefits as they come. So what we're expecting is, you saw in John's presentation, we have an approval rate of about 56% or so, but we've seen from other states that as the program continues, the adoption rate rises, and in some states it's risen precipitously, right? And it's caused some financial precariousness in some states where the precipitous rises happened much more quickly than they had anticipated. So and you can blame this all on me, that's okay, but it really is my more conservative bent to say we have a responsibility to make sure that fund remains as solvent as possible. And we don't want to pull the only other lever that we have statutorily, which is to lower the amount of benefits that people get. So so now that we know we're in the first year, we are watching what other states are doing. We don't need to take more than what we need to run our operation day to day. So it's just going to stay there and it'll be available as we move, as we know that the adoption rate, as they call it, for benefits will continue to rise, because we're in year one. And so people are going to run through their 12-month period and they're going to come right back, right, for their next 12-month period. And now they're going to know how to fill out the forms. They're going to know what to do. And so we're going to see that rate continue to go up. And so I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. And I think it's good clarity and reminder for folks who are watching or paying attention to our fiscal responsibility. I think there's been a lot of fear in the implementation before the authority was up and running about what's going to happen, 5 years from now, and constantly reminding folks that fiscal responsibility is priority here, doing projects to budget or under budget, but still getting really, really great work, productive work out of the team is always a bonus, I guess. So thank you for that clarity.
You're welcome. I just, I will say that I come from a long work history of being in a nonprofit where there is no money. So that's probably where my mindset comes from, is that we do what we need to do. We certainly don't shortchange the people we're charged of supporting, but we want to make sure that we spend our money responsibly. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, David. Any other additional questions for David or the team? Great. Thank you so much, David. Excellent report. And again, thank you to Andrea and all of you for the efficiencies that you're bringing to your small but mighty team, and obviously for your stewardship of not only our taxpayer dollars, but for our client dollars as well coming in, and your stewardship of all of those funds. Thank you. So moving on, Andrea, can you please provide your CEO report?
Yeah, so my report is very short. I just would like to respectfully remind those board members that have not yet taken the ethics training to please do so. We get little pings from the Office of State Ethics. So we want to make sure that everyone is compliant with that. And second, I know Dave we'd sent an email before, but I just want to remind everyone that we have fulfilled our obligation to repay our entire seed money allotment of $5.1 million on time. So I want to thank Dave and his team and all of the financial stewardship that he and his team have shown to make sure that we could meet that goal. Dave is really good at saying no, which is great. So it's like, no, we're not doing that because we have these other things to do and we're going to meet these obligations. And I'm very grateful to him for his expertise and his stewardship. So thank you, Dave, to you and your team. And that actually concludes my report, unless anyone has any questions for me.
Thank you, Andrea. Again, congrats to this team and for all of the work in terms of meeting that tremendous benchmark. Really great news today coming from this team. Is there any old business to report or discuss?
Well, before we move on, can I ask Andrea a couple of questions?
Sure.
Sure. Andrea, two totally unrelated questions. One, perhaps I should have asked John. David mentioned there's some payment to the Department of Labor for grievance adjudication. Can you give us some insight as to how many claims have gone through that process, have been appealed?
Yes, I can, but the better person to answer that, the better people to answer this questions are Erin and Michael, who actually handle the claims every day. So they can give you some insight and explain how that process works. And Erin, do you mind, or Michael, which one of you would like to answer Mike's question?
Well, I'll start and Michael can jump in because he's taken the neighboring oar on some of these appeals. Based on our tracking sheet that I just pulled up, we have had 355 appeals filed since I think the very first one was filed on January 4th. In terms of the decisions, vast majority of them have been dismissed. Sometimes because the appellant withdrew, sometimes because appellants can file for request for reconsideration and an appeal with Department of Labor simultaneously. It's candidly not our favorite way for things to happen because it seems like extra. Absolutely, they're right. And so what often happens is the request for reconsideration is going forward. And oftentimes we're able to report to Department of Labor that the issue has been resolved. Or we at least tell them we're working to resolve the issue at the time that we have to file our response. So a lot of times the cases are dismissed as being moot or no aggrievement. There was, just looking to see, I can't necessarily do it at the same time, so maybe Michael can figure out the numbers on that. We did have kind of a peak in appeals at that same time that we were clearing the backlog and issuing a lot of decisions right at once. So I had a lot of appeals this spring, and since then, the frequency has kind of gone back down to a few every week. Michael, do you have any better numbers than I could come up with?
So don't quote me on this because I think I'm doing a little bit of math on the side of my desk. I think we have 220 decisions that have been reached by the Department of Labor. And of that 220, 197 of them were dismissed. And I think I have 14 of them were sustained, in other words, overturned decision. The vast majority of those are because new information was available during the Department of Labor's review that wasn't available when AFLAC was initially reviewing the claim. And then there were 4 claims that were dismissed in part, sustained in part, where it's maybe a few dates. We approved certain dates, but the Department of Labor said we should have approved a few more. Things like that were happening on those claims. So those numbers may not be exact, but it's general ballpark.
Yeah, okay, no, that's very helpful. My other question is, going back to Andrea, I think it's terrific that this $13 million is going to stay in the contribution fund. And I don't read very often about a government agency foregoing administrative fees and putting the money to a better use. And I know we're going to have some distribution about the fee remaining the same for next year, the percent contribution. Is there also an opportunity to publicize that that we're not using all of our administrative fee for administration and that a significant amount of money is going into the contribution fund?
Well, I think the opportunity always exists. Quite frankly, I hadn't really considered it, and maybe that's just my mindset. I just thought that was just the right thing to do. That we operate the way we do, and then we just leave the money in the fund. So we can certainly consider that. Sure, I think that's important. We want people to know that we value the fact that it's a portion of everyone's paycheck. For some of us who may be more fortunate, that yearly contribution might not be significant, but I've said this before, I think even during my interview, but just based on the background of the 20 years that I've worked in the nonprofit space and the numbers of families that I've supported, that can make a significant difference. It buys boxes of macaroni and cheese and SpaghettiOs and feeds families, so it's not a small dollar amount. So if that's the idea, then we can certainly think about how we want to couch the message. Not that we're wonderful people and didn't spend all the money, but but we're really good. We are so acutely aware of how important every dollar is in every paycheck that we're doing all that we can to make sure that as much money stays in the contribution fund as possible.
Yeah, I just think about at the beginning, one of the biggest concerns was this going to be fiscally viable?
That's right.
And, as Ava pointed out in her comments earlier, yes, we've kept our eye on the financial ball, and here's another example of that. It's an opportunity for some good publicity, and I leave it to your team to decide whether or not we take advantage of that opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, I will bring it back. So Jessica would be very unhappy with me if I made a commitment with her not being here. So I will certainly bring it back to her and talk about a way that we can do that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Molly?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up on Mike's first question. So I know that it's helpful to have the context on the formal DOL appeals, but do we have any data on number of requests for reconsideration? And also, I think at one point we were talking about looking into what proportion of claims that are initially denied are later paid, because it's in the 25% ballpark that every night, which is a large chunk. And I know we were looking into sort of those two pieces. So I was curious if we had more information on either of those.
John looks like he wants to answer this question.
Hi, Molly. So recently when we were at our AFLAC site visit, they did provide some information on that, and we could likely share some of that with you as well. The number of reconsiderations I don't have off the top of my head. However, I do have that data available, and I believe that the approval rate on those reconsiderations was 58%, sticks in my mind. So we could certainly provide some of that information to you, and was provided recently, and we're hoping to receive regular updates on those numbers as well.
That would be super helpful. And even if we could incorporate that in the regular claims report, I think that's important context in terms
Sure.
of not just here's who's being initially denied, but a chunk of folks are putting in reconsideration and ultimately getting paid, which I think makes us feel better about the overall context of people who are ending up getting ballot claims paid. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional comments under old business? If not, we'll move to new business. Any new business?
I do have one thing, Commissioner.
Certainly.
And I know we've been keeping the board informed about the hiring of a vendor management person that will be working with John and essentially then become our primary liaison between the agency and our vendors, primarily AFLAC. So there's been a team that's been interviewing. We do have some final candidates that we'll be considering, and we're hoping to make a decision in the next few weeks.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for that update. Any other new business? Okay, thank you again so much for this meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you so much. Again, the meeting is adjourned at 10:09. And thank you again to this team and to all of those that are watching the proceedings today. Thank you for observing and for your advocacy. Thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.